Hello and welcome to Lunchtime Politics. First, the highlights. Supreme Court adjourns to next week, Wednesday, February 22nd, 2023, hearing of consolidated suit on the controversial Naira swap policy. Political parties continue their campaigns. ADC governorship candidate tours Ijebu North local government area, canvassing for votes. Plus, we'll look at the security situation ahead of the general election. Security risk consultant Tanwa Ashu joins me to discuss the risk of cyber attacks. Welcome again to the program. I'm Millicent Walker in Lagos. It's 9 days to the general elections, and the thorny issue over the use of the old notes of 1,500 and 200 Naira being used as legal tenders in the country continues. This is as the Supreme Court adjourned to next week, Wednesday, February the 22nd, 2023, hearing of the consolidated suit on the controversial Naira swap policy. At today's sitting, the Apex Court was filled to capacity. A retinue of senior advocates, legal practitioners, also the governors of Kaduna and Kogi states were present. Court proceedings began with Justice John Okoro, who was leading the 7-man panel, informing the court not to lose sight of the case and its intention as it affects the suffering of Nigerians. Zamfara, Kogi and Kaduna states had instituted the suit against the federal government and the central bank. Niger, Kano, Ondo, Ekiti and Lagos states have also applied to be joined in this suit. However, in another twist, Edo and Bayelsa states applied to be joined as respondents on the side of the federal government.
We are in court because Nigerians are suffering as a result of this CBN modeled up cashless versus currency redesign. That is why we are here today. And from the understanding we have from this court, the order made by these honorable justices still subsists up till Wednesday when the matter will be heard. Thank you very much. And I want to urge, and of course, all of us governors, we want to urge all Nigerians. Yes, we are all suffering, but let's stay alive. Let's maintain peace, law and order. If we kill ourselves, others will remain there to enjoy your money. It is just a temporary setback for us in this country. We are not condemning this particular policy of President Muhammadu Buhari. It is going to be the way to go, but the implementation, that is what we are questioning.
I want you to know the government is not deliberately frustrating the plaintiffs. This is a problem that we are trying to solve. I'm happy that the proceedings were conducted peacefully, harmoniously. We are trying to reason with one another to resolve it. That's where we are. They are not deliberately refraining from putting money in the ATM. Nobody is deliberately. It's the banks. The banks operate the ATMs. They do. And I join in appealing to the banks to put money in the ATM if they have it.
Meanwhile, this is the situation in some streets in Ibadan, the real estate capital. They've been barricaded as protests break out in parts of the city over the new Naira notes and difficulty in accessing cash. We understand that protesters barricaded some roads, preventing free flow of traffic in the area. Same scenario playing out in Sabo Road Junction. Another barricade been made to prevent vehicular movement. We're also being told cars were turned back at some points. Some school children had to return home as a result of some of these skirmishes. Our correspondent reports that security operatives are on ground to prevent another violent breakout at the moment. We'll bring you more details as we get them. Well, only yesterday, the Senior Special Assistant to the President on Media and Publicity, Mr. Garba Shehu, in a statement said that it's not true that the federal government or the central bank have taken a preemptive action on the legality of the currency as a legal tender in view of the pendency of the case before the Supreme Court. According to him, the position of the government and the CBN will be made known upon the determination of the suit. We perhaps will assume that that now stretches to Wednesday next week. But joining us to talk more about this is Dr. Ayo Teriba. He's the CEO, Economic Associates. He joins me from Lagos virtually. Thank you for joining me on the program. So decision day has been postponed to next week. But what do you make of the scenarios playing out as a result of what appears to be uncertainty, the problems Nigerians are facing as a result of this existing Naira redesign policy?
Well, the adjournment by the Supreme Court till next Wednesday prolongs the uncertainty, and it's, we are left to the whims and caprices, as it were, of the central bank, who has not even as much as come out to say that, okay, the Supreme Court has said the deadline should not be 10th. The central bank hasn't come out, creating doubts in the mind of people whether they should accept the old notes or they shouldn't accept the old notes, although I see that, in most places the old notes are still being accepted. The problem is the uncertainty and the chaos, that you find in the banking halls, outside the banks, at ATMs, at points of sale. The role of the central bank is actually to reduce uncertainty-related economic transactions. But this policy is, the central bank, for the first time perhaps in the history of the institution, is itself the source of uncertainty, is itself the source of confusion. The central bank is trying to blame banks, is blaming politicians. Before they did the policy, they said politicians were holding the old notes. Now that they've done the policy and it has failed, they are blaming politicians for holding the new notes. So, well, admitting that the central bank has no capacity, to prevent anybody who wants to hold money from doing so. So we hope that, because when you wait until 22nd, that's 3 days before the election. So unfortunately, the bad news is that we have to wait 1 more week, and this confusion will continue. In some places, riots are breaking out. It's quite unfortunate indeed.
Indeed, what we've reported happening in Ibadan as well. So what do we need to do now? Is it a reorientation as to, also collecting the old notes rather than, some businesses, rural communities insisting that the new notes should suffice? And who should be doing that reorientation now? Would it be the CBN, the federal government? Who do you think should step in to avoid chaos?
The way to end the chaos is to suspend the policy altogether. It has failed. Here, left. It has failed. Are we together? And even if you give the central bank 1 year, it will not work. The reason, the sheer number of notes circulating in the country is above 10 billion pieces. Since
I hope we still have our guest with us. We appear to have lost him. He was on his way when we spoke to him, but he has been talking to us, that's Dr. Ayo Teriba, about this Naira redesign, which he says the policy should be suspended. We'll get to that and other issues. But let's go on to political campaigns now. The All Progressives Congress vice presidential candidate, Kashim Shettima, he has pledged to use ecological funds to mitigate the challenge of erosion that have been affecting agricultural production in Yobe State, as well as create jobs for women and youth when his party wins. He disclosed this at a zonal campaign rally in Potoskum, the headquarters of Yobe South, alongside the President of Senate, Ahmed Lawan, and the Yobe State Governor, May Mala Buni, who also pledged the highest vote for the APC during the 2023 presidential election. Meanwhile, the presidential candidate of the Accord Party, Professor Chris Imomulan, believes that the destiny of the nation is tied to youth's involvement in the development of the country through active participation in politics. The professor was speaking at the presidential parley organized by the National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies, Karu, Plateau State.
What is happening in this country today regards to this monetary issue. We are not saying the policy is bad, but we are not happy with the hardship it has caused Nigerian citizens today. We believe if it is not addressed properly, it is going to affect so many things, including the conduct of the election on the election days. You have to use money to buy fuel, you have to use money to run around, and you have to use money to take care of the deployment of your staff to various polling units. So for this election to be successful, the federal government and CBN has to step in to complement. So we are calling strongly, as a political party, Accord is calling strongly on the CBN and the federal government to please step in and save these masses from going or suffering, more of this hardship. Enough is enough, honestly. We are suffering, and we don't want Nigerians to continue suffering.
Well, still on the political campaigns to women inclusion in Cross River State, the wife of the presidential candidate for the People's Democratic Party, Mrs. Titi Atiku Abubakar, has charged women across the globe to vote the PDP presidential candidate in the 2023 general election, as they stand to benefit 60% in appointments. She was speaking in Calabar, the Cross River State capital, during a stakeholders meeting with women across the state why they should vote someone with experience to move the nation to greater heights.
Women in their numbers across Cross River State gather in Calabar, the state capital, as they drum support for the People's Democratic Party candidates. The event has in attendance the wife of the PDP flag bearer, Mrs. Titi Atiku Abubakar, as she seeks support from the party in the coming election. She explains that the country needs someone with experience at the federal level, and Atiku Abubakar is the best candidate to revive the nation and give women more opportunities.
He wants to empower the youth. He wants to build industries in all the state, because at the expiration of their schools, they had nowhere to go to. He wants to empower the women. In his government, he wants to give women and youth 60%. He walks his talk. He does not just talk. And he wants to have microcredit for the women, which is going to be a revolving loan.
Action for reasonable women.
Speaking to party supporters, the wife of the vice presidential flag bearer of the party, amongst other speakers, asked everyone present to vote out the ruling party.
On that day, it's not too much talk. Move from your home. Don't be deterred with this finger. Not just this finger with what? Your PVC. Because that is what we are going to use to vote out this trouble that we have, this cancer that is eating up Nigeria.
Any vote that is not for PDP, any vote that is not for Atiku Akowa ticket is a waste of votes. That is the truth of the matter.
As Nigerians move to the ballot come February the 25th to cast their vote for the candidate of their choice, expectations are high that the elections will be free, fair, and credible.
Welcome back. The Lagos State Police Command now has a new commissioner of police. He is Mr. Idowu Owuhonwa. He assumed office yesterday and says he's set to implement an effective policing system in the state on the forthcoming elections. He gives assurances that he will ensure a free, fair and credible exercise and that resources, logistics will be put together for Lagosians to elect the leader of their choice.
We must be reminded that the immediate task we must deal with has to do with the upcoming general elections as they affect Lagos State. The outgoing Commissioner of Police has briefed me in detail on the strategies and action plan for the exercise. As we commence the process of giving effect to these plans, I wish to assure Lagosians of our firm resolve and full preparedness of Lagos State Police Command to ensure that the process is peaceful, secure, and credible. Our operation shall also be conducted within the dictates of the revised Code of Conduct for Police Officers on Election Security, which was recently developed by the Inspector General of Police and distributed to all state police commands, including Lagos State. I, however, call on all the electorates to cooperate with us and exercise their franchise within the ambits of the law in the electoral process, as the command is committed to identifying, isolating, and dealing decisively with any person or group that intends to put our resolve to ensure peace within the electoral process to test. In this regard, while electoral advisories will be brought to justice in the swiftest manner, peace-loving and law-abiding electorates will be duly protected and the electoral space fully policed for this purpose.
Joining us now to talk more about security ahead of the elections is Tanwa Ashiru. She's an enterprise security risk consultant and CEO, Bulwark Intelligence. She joins me from Lagos virtually. Thank you and welcome to the program. First, what's your take on the recent reports on insecurity threatening the general elections? There have been some by Clean Foundation as one, saying that some states are safe, but there are red zones. Most states are in the red zone. Do explain to us what this means.
Yeah, so there's a joint civil society group that meets regularly to evaluate sort of election security. And they're known as the Interagency Consultative Committee on Electoral Security. I know it's a mouthful, but we'll call them ICCES. Now, this group met together a few months ago, and they conducted an assessment. Their assessment revealed that there were about 686 different communities across Nigeria with high levels of insecurity. Now, the issue here is they said, look, this might pose a challenge for INEC to effectively get election materials to these different communities. Now, 90% of those communities were actually located up north. Half of those were actually in the northwest region alone, particularly Zamfara State, which has been hard hit with the bandit terrorism that's going on. The north central also had a pretty huge chunk of insecure communities, as well as the southeast, particularly Imo State, Anambra, and Abia State. Now, these two maps actually show, different areas that Clean Foundation and Risk Advisory Organization, Bulwark Intelligence, is sort of assessing that could experience some level of violence during the elections and also post-election. Now, the way they're able to come up with that assessment is you're looking at places that have already reported significant pre-electoral violence, and also places where, the assessment reveals or projection reveals that people in that area might be upset after the results are announced. And so that's kind of what is used to come up with that assessment. And either way, INEC still insists that they're going forward with the elections, and the security agencies also say they're going to do whatever they can to prevent any form of violence on that day.
We have had them on the show, but then we're also looking at two technological innovations, the BVAS and the IREV, that will be used for the elections next week. Is there a threat of hacking? And this is what the INEC chairman alluded to in the off-cycle elections last year. And how do you think this could play out?
Yeah, so the Electoral Act of 2022 actually ushered in sort of the digitization of INEC. And the reason is simple. The manual process was leading to significant interference and preventing a truly free and fair election. So the introduction of the BVAS and the IREV are supposed to help eliminate some of these risks. And if all goes well, the issue of ballot stuffing, ballot snatching, results collation tampering, and even voter fraud should be significantly reduced. But with increased dependence on technology actually comes the threat of that cyberspace also brings with it. You're looking at some interference with individuals in their decision-making process. So you're talking about disinformation and misinformation campaigns that could affect individuals in their decision-making process. We also have, cases of maybe influencers that are being paid to make statements that could either help or harm specific candidates. And you also have cases of what we call deep fake videos. And these are false videos that could show certain people making statements which they never said. This actually is particularly scary for a place like Nigeria, where the wrong comment about a tribe or religion can really lead to some significant violence and destruction. Now, most important threats, though, to INEC is the threats to their systems. I know during the Ekiti and Osun elections, the INEC chairman said that their portal experienced significant levels of cyber attack, but thankfully their engineers and cybersecurity teams were able to effectively respond. Now, INEC, there are 4 notable sort of tools that they use in terms of tech. One is called BASED, which is the sort of a basic security awareness training, and it's a platform that they use to train their over 1 million staff and ad hoc staff that are going to be deployed across the country. So it shows them what to do in terms of election security awareness. You also have the election logistics management system. That's also an app that INEC uses to track the over, all the materials that have to be sent to over 176,000 polling units. They have over 100,000 vehicles, over 4,200 boats. So logistics can be a nightmare, and so they're using tech to be able to track that effectively. So, but then there are 2 external facing tools that they use, like we mentioned earlier, BVAS and IREV. And these are the ones that are more prone to sort of cyber attacks and possible hacking and election interference. With BVAS, it helps ensure the voter is who they say they are. But then the downside of that is that these biometric tools can sometimes act up, which can cause delays. Sometimes they can give false negative errors. That means legitimate voters might not be able to effectively accredit themselves, and verify their identities. Now, in the recent BVAS mock testing and accreditation exercise that was recently conducted, there were some challenges that came out of that. First was they said the internet network and servers had challenges, and so it affected their ability to activate the BVAS and configure it accurately in some locations. And these were happening in some remote areas. So another issue was they said in some of these places, the actual BVAS device, the hardware had some faults and the fingerprinting scanners were not working. So these are some issues that we might see and that INEC needs to be very observant about and careful about. Now, the other one is the results viewing portal. That one is supposed to help transmit the results in near real time. And again, the issue with this is the fact that the internet network might be a challenge in that area. And interestingly, during the Ekiti and Osun states elections, INEC said that they had challenges verifying some of the quality of the uploads. They had low quality uploads, which they said happened because the officers that had been trained for this were not available at the time. So INEC has said that don't worry, they'll ensure that the adequately trained officers are available to make sure that the results are properly transmitted and uploaded on that viewing portal. So, I know it's a little too late to sort of give advice and recommendations in terms of how INEC can sort of prevent any attacks or hacking attacks, which they said, again, during the Ekiti and Osun state elections, there were a significant number of cyber attacks against their portals, but they were able to deal with that. So going forward, we hope that by now, INEC has already done some level of preparedness. They've probably done some vulnerability testings to see where their weakness is, maybe called some ethical hackers to try to hack them and see if they're successful or not, so they can cover and mitigate any of those risks that are there.
And Tanwa, I must ask you, and this is unrelated to cyber, but it is what we are noticing or we are seeing right now, the Naira redesign policy, the inability to access new Naira notes, those refusing the old Naira notes. Do you see this posing a security challenge as we head to the elections?
Well, I know we were recently on a webinar call, and and someone on that call actually mentioned that they were hearing, that there might be challenges in properly sort of funding some of these logistics that need to happen ahead of the election. So, for example, the security personnel that need to be deployed. Remember, a lot of these places are very remote. They need to be able to access certain transportations, purchase the fuel that they need for the boats, for the vehicles. Over 100,000 vehicles across the country are going to be deployed for this. Even the ability for INEC staff themselves to make it to certain polling units effectively. So in terms of cash, I know the CBN has come out to say, listen, no matter what, we will make sure that the adequate cash is available so that, or funds actually is available so that we don't have any of these issues. But, hopefully, we actually see that play out on that day.
We appreciate your time. Thanks so much. Tanwa Asher is the Enterprise Risk Consultant, CEO, Bulwark Intelligence. Thank you for joining me on the program. Well, we have more political stories now. 12 political parties in Ogun State have signed a peace accord with the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, ahead of the elections. The peace accord was administered by INEC at the Stakeholders Forum, which held at the capital, Abeokuta. The Northern Elders Forum raised concerns over increasing spates of violence and attacks across the country, especially in the southeast. In a statement signed by the forum's Director of Publicity and Advocacy, Akim Baba Ahmed, the group said it had noted an increase in violence across the southeastern states and a deafening silence from leaders in the region. He expressed concerns that the threats to the peace of the region had also been followed by attacks on security agents. Meanwhile, the Atiku Kowa campaign organization is calling on INEC and Nigerians to continue to resist the pressure to postpone the general elections. According to a statement, the party's campaign organization says desperate call for the postponement is part of plots designed to cause panic, create an atmosphere of political uncertainty. He urged Nigerians and INEC to remain alert and continue to resist the plan to derail the country's democracy. And finally, the Edo State Governor, Governor Obaseki, charged journalists in the state to ensure a peaceful and inclusive reporting of the forthcoming general elections, warning the media not to allow themselves be used by politicians to fan the embers of disunity through hate speech. He made the disclosure when he received members of the Nigerian Union of Journalists, Edo State, who were on a courtesy visit. And you've been served lunchtime politics at this time. Don't forget, indeed, to join the conversation on our social media handles. Thank you for watching. Yes, there they are on your screen. I'm Innocent Walker. Goodbye.